Hello and welcome everyone to the big nudes in the DM.
No. I think we said that wrong. Let's.
Yep, I think I said it right. I'm
All
Doug.
right.
This
All
is
right.
the girthiest and veiniest show on the internet.
I know that's not true.
Welcome to the most throbbing co-host of all.
Oh God, this is
Doug.
getting. This is a throbbing tug. Nope.
Yep.
Nope.
Yep. You'll notice Bug is not here. That's because he decided he had better things to do than talk about the FCS quarterfinals for some reason. That's
Something
insane to
about
me.
something about a holiday party for his work.
Gross. Who does that kind of thing? Get out of here. Celebrates the holidays. I don't even have my lights on my tree because
But you have a tree up.
that is true. It is true. But it's also December 7. So I mean it's a little bit early for Christmas things.
No, it's about right on time. I would say it's about right on time.
Who am I kidding? I've been listening to Christmas music for 3 weeks already, actually.
Yeah, but yours have been like not your standard Christmas music, which makes it okay.
My favorite Christmas album of all time is August Burns Red. That's it's great.
Die Hard is also your favorite Christmas movie.
That is incorrect.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
What is your favorite Christmas
is Die Hard
movie?
your favorite Christmas movie? What's yours?
I've always been a National Lampoon's
You brought it
Christmas
up.
Vacation fan.
Man, okay.
No, you can't judge me
Interesting.
like that without giving me yours.
I can, and I'm
No.
about to.
No. What's your favorite Christmas movie?
I like some of them, that's for sure.
Yeah, but what's your favorite one? Is it one that's on Hallmark or Lifetime?
No,
Oh, okay, good. I still respect you as a person then.
no, I'm actually a huge fan of Elf.
That's fair.
My family watches it at least once a year, every year now.
I could get on board with that. That's a good one.
Okay. Oh man. So welcome to the show. We're not the big nudes in the DMs, we're the big dudes in the trenches because we talk about football stuff. As the rules imply, we talk about almost every game all the time, but especially in these playoffs and in
Playoffs.
the in the championship week and Army Navy week and in bowl season, we're talking about every game in Division 1 for sure, guaranteed. There are no more bonus points as far as I know. Bug had an idea, but it was just a way for him to swindle more bonus points
Yeah, he
out of
doesn't
bowl
need help.
season. Exactly. So bonus points are over, which means it is what it is. On bonus points, you have to catch me the natural way.
On the one hand, I get what you mean. On the other hand, I don't wanna.
It would be cool if you did.
No, dude. You just talked about us being the big nudes big nudes in the DMs, and now you want me to catch you the all natural way? No.
Oh, yes. Very much so. That's disturbing.
Yeah, it is. That was my thought.
I think it is time to talk a little bit of playoffs.
I heard
Playoffs?
it. Playoffs.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs?
I'm not kidding you.
Still one of the greatest NFL sound bites ever.
It's hard to beat. Although Sean McDermott really tried today when he gave a speech about how teamwork is important, just like the Saudi Arabians had when they knocked down our towers on 9/11. I'm not kidding. It's a real thing that happened today.
Aren't they playing the Jets this week?
Holy shit. I hope so now. That makes it way worse. Oh, no.
Oh, no, they're playing the Chiefs. All right. Crisis averted.
Not really. It's still a crisis. What the fuck? You can't just talk about how September 11 is a show of great teamwork.
I will say there's not many sound bites that compete with what's his name? God damn it.
I'm gonna let you fester.
I know he's the Lions coach. Does that count for anything?
He used to be the head coach of Miami, so you really ought to know.
That's not true, dude. There's Don Shula, there's a bunch of blanks, and then there's Mike McDaniels. That's really all that matters.
Wow. You're forgetting your man Dan Campbell.
That's not Dan Campbell. I'm saying this guy on the screen, not Dan Campbell.
Oh, I thought you said the Lions coach. I thought you meant modern.
No, this guy was the coach of the Lions, wasn't he?
Okay.
Or was this when he was with the Colts?
Either way, for this.
There's not many sound bites that beat this, but Mike McDaniel, when you listen to he sounds so high, it's not even funny sometimes. And he just has some of the quickest one-liners.
Dan Campbell when he talked about biting players' kneecaps off.
No, that's just straight up Dan Campbell, man. That's grit.
Exactly. That's what makes it so great.
That's PC principle over there.
That's just normal Dan Campbell shenanigans.
Yeah.
Anyway, talk about the FCS playoffs. Let's get into it here. We are down to the quarterfinals, which means we have a lot of Big Sky and a lot of Missouri Valley. We do have a couple of sneakers off in here. Starting off, the SoCon at the Big Sky here, Furman at Montana.
But before we get into it, I feel real bad forgetting who Jim Mora was.
You should. I was just going to let you fester as long as it took.
I had to look it up. Either way, this is going to be a great game. Furman's making a good run for it, but I think they come up on the end of their Cinderella story here. Montana's just on a different level right now. They've been playing solid. They've looked good. They have not looked like they did in week 1, week 2, since about week 4. So this is they're running into a monster. It's just bad timing.
It's the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are at home against a Southern Conference team who's actually in the South, which is not always the case for SoCon teams.
Montana and Bozeman?
Yes.
Let's look this up now because I'm curious.
And what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. The spread for this came out, and it is actually like 20.5 points in favor of the Grizzlies, which seems a little bit disrespectful, not going to lie. Furman has had a great season, and they're coming on, they won the second round game pretty definitively. I really don't think there's any qualms in saying Furman is one of the best teams in the country right now, but they're running into the Grizzlies.
Yeah, they're running into honestly, not just the number 2 seed, but the second hottest team in the FCS. More importantly, they're running into the second hottest team with a high temperature tomorrow of 34 degrees, and they're coming from the SoCon. That is going to be brutal.
That's a very high temperature, yes. Nice balmy, tropical 34 degrees. Can't wait.
God damn it.
This game will be on Friday night, which is also terrifying. A night game, and it's definitely going to be snowing.
Yep.
Because that's how
No, it's not. It's not in the snow. It's not in the forecast.
I don't believe it.
It's in the forecast for Monday.
The forecast can say whatever it wants to. It's going to snow in spirit.
1% chance tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a 100% chance in my heart.
Fair enough.
Next up here, Villanova at South Dakota State. Of course, we're all going with the Jackrabbits. I think you nailed it pretty well. You said Montana was the second hottest team.
Yeah.
Yes. Here's the first, and it's not.
I swear these all don't go by their ranking.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. No, South Dakota State is undefeated.
Yep.
In a couple of years now. That's pretty good when you can do that, pull that off. Even across 2 head coaches now, which is insane. Jimmy Rogers today.
We'll talk more about that later, I think.
Head coach of the year, according to Stats Perform. But we'll see. We'll see if we agree. Maybe that's coming up.
Maybe. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Next, North Dakota State at South Dakota, an all Missouri Valley quarterfinals game. Now, South Dakota did win the regular season matchup between these two teams at North Dakota State by 5 points. So then why are Bug and I going for North Dakota State? I feel like I need to justify this first before I let you go, because you are picking who should, in theory, be the favorite, right?
Yeah.
South Dakota won that game off of 2 massive breakaway plays and North Dakota State not playing as well as they normally do on offense. There was a turnover. Even still, North Dakota State had more production, like in terms of total yardage, than South Dakota did by a lot. They won time of possession by a lot. 1 turnover and 2 breakaway plays. Sure, it's a close enough game where that makes a difference, but also I don't think that happens again, and B, I'm not sure it's that close this time around. North Dakota State is playing like the better team as of late. It's hard to argue there's I know
So
we've said it twice
let
now, but
me
this
put some
is
words
one of
in.
the hottest teams in the FCS for sure.
I was just gonna say, let me put some words in your mouth here. The third hottest team in the country is North Dakota
yeah,
State. Like
right.
it doesn't follow the seeding. The matchups
Right.
might. Like the
Right.
number 3 seed is involved, but South Dakota is not the third hottest team in the country right now. That is North Dakota State. But I don't know if you know this. The entire state of South Dakota hates the entire state of North Dakota. More importantly, where I think this game is, because everything you brought up is a solid point. This is going to be, you're not going to get fluke plays, or you shouldn't get fluke plays that win this game. But I think that crowd's going to be a factor out in Vermilion. I think North Dakota State on the road is not the same team quite as much.
Okay.
I'll bring it back to what you guys keep saying. Domes are different places to play in FCS college football. Man, I'm gonna ride with the home team here in a little bit of home state pride, even if it bites me in the ass.
Really fun stat about that, saying that they're not going to travel well, or maybe it'll be home field advantage. North Dakota State fans broke into the system, figured out the password to get to South Dakota's allotment of tickets, and bought up all of South Dakota's tickets that were going unsold.
That's hilarious.
So North Dakota State fans are going to show up in waves for this.
Dude, I love it. I'm still gonna give it to the home team here.
I get it.
That's really where I'm drawing the line. Pretty much any other team outside of Montana and South Dakota. Put North Dakota against Idaho, and I probably take North Dakota State here. Put North Dakota State against Albany, and I take North Dakota State. Against another Missouri Valley team, I'm leaning the home team here.
Yeah, I think the only teams I'm picking ahead of the Bison this year are South Dakota State and Montana. And at least right now.
I mean, the way this is breaking out, we might get. I mean, they're going to be on a collision course if this goes the way you think it does.
I know, which I'm very excited for.
Which is like a repeat of last year too.
I know.
The year before.
There will be one difference though, and that would be the 4th team in that semifinal.
Yes,
which will come down to Albany against Idaho in the Kibbe Dome. And it is the night game, the only game this weekend that is not on network television. You have to go to ESPN Plus for it, but it'll definitely be worth it.
That's just payback for last week for Idaho being the only game on network television.
Right. Fair enough.
Which I can't believe after that game, they did not put it back on network television. There's something about that team, man.
I know.
My entire logic here, I wish Bug were here to talk just about why he's taking Albany. I think I can see it. But man, playing the Kibbe Dome, it's not even the entire game. It's that second half where that crowd starts to take over and you can see a difference in the players. That's what I noticed last week. What's your take?
Holding up the baking sheets, going nuts.
Yeah,
it's
right.
A great environment. What I will say in favor of Albany here, and I know I'm picking the Vandals, but in favor of Albany, Southern Illinois last week felt like their offense was so up and down, drive to drive. Like, there were some great plays by the Idaho defense, but there were also some inept plays by that Southern Illinois offense that made this as close as it was last week. Really, it felt like Southern Illinois was the better team for several drives, but Idaho just came up clutch.
Yep.
Albany's offense is way better than Southern Illinois'. Like, I don't know that it's close. And the defense is relatively comparable, at least what we know right now. I don't know if it's exactly the same level, but I don't mind putting Albany's defense up against anybody in the country. So with a more high-powered offense, there is a chance that Albany is able to move the ball more consistently than Southern Illinois could, which would be the difference in that kind of a game. I had a really hard time picking this one, honestly. I took the Tug approach, went with the home team in a game that I couldn't decide.
There's more to it than that for me too, and it's what team to this point has Albany played on the road in a stadium like the Kibbe Dome?
Fair. That's
Right?
very fair.
That's an environment that is not common to these teams. I mean, Albany, I'm almost surprised they don't have a dome, or do they?
They don't.
Okay, I'm almost surprised they don't because they're in that northern tier where most of these domes sit. But a lot of the CAA doesn't have domes. A lot of the Northeastern Conference doesn't have domes. So a lot of where they like to hang out, where they like to go play their games in their conference, they don't have this experience. And that's, I think, going to be a huge difference maker versus the Big Sky in the Missouri Valley, where just about every other team has a dome.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely hand it to Idaho. That environment is something else, and they are battle tested, right? Montana, Montana State, at least in their own conference.
Yep.
We could even add more from their own conference, and then on top of that, so it's yeah, Idaho's a very good team in their own right. I will give the offensive edge though in this game to Albany.
That's fair.
Defense wins championships. So
so here's the problem with that. There's another part of that saying. Offense wins games, defenses win championships.
I've always heard as offense sells tickets.
That too. I mean, they do that too.
But it'll be tough to sell tickets to people out in Albany when your game is taking place in Moscow, Idaho. Yep. So good luck with that.
Facts.
But that actually does it for the FCS because there are only 4 games in the FCS this weekend. Exciting stuff. It is the quarterfinals after all, which means next week, the semifinals, and then we have like an entire month off, almost. Not exactly, but 3 weeks off until the championship game. Maybe I'm premature in asking this, but what do you do with that amount of time in between the semifinals and the championship game if you're the head coach?
Oh, if you're the head coach, man, I'll tell you the first thing I do is I'm going to spend the first entire week knowing who my opponent's going to be in nothing but game planning meetings with my coaches. I'm going to give the guys a week off. Maybe some light training, some light cardio in the weight room. But we're not going to do anything intense. That first day we'll review film from the previous game, make some corrections we need to. But after that, I'm doing a bunch of film study with my coaching staff, and I'm giving these kids a break because let's be honest, at this point they would have played just about 14 games in approximately 16 weeks.
Right.
They deserve a break.
I'm sure players.
It's also about It's also about finals time for them too.
Right. I know, which is why the Ivy League doesn't participate because
Assholes.
They're scared if they're successful, they will ruin their final schedule because that's clearly what matters here is playing school.
Right.
Oh,
I play school at football practice. Well, you're doing football practice wrong.
But in addition to being quarterfinals week, there is one FBS game this weekend. One singular game gets its own time
Gillette
slot.
Stadium. My wife is excited she gets to work it.
Of course, we were talking about the Army-Navy game, which means we have special uniforms because that's what it means now every year.
I love both of these uniforms.
Well, let's start off with Army. Do you know the symbolism behind this uniform?
I know it is, I believe it's based off the 3rd, I want to say, Infantry Division. Back in the early stages of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Rock of the Marne was the unit's motto. And then the tan that you see is meant to kind of invoke the Iraqi desert sands and things like that, match the tan uniforms of the time.
I mean, pretty well nailed it. I wasn't going to say anything different, so perfect. No, this Army uniform is dang clean, I gotta say.
So that's the thing, is you're going to see two different styles of uniform here. Army goes the simplistic, clean route. Navy goes for the shock and awe route, which is really funny because that's kind of opposite how they both actually operate.
Right.
But these are, if you're looking for a classic style uniform that just pops for no good reason, it actually just pops, the Army's the way to go.
Yeah, and I usually don't like that weird, like, extra detail on, like, the stomach line, but that inverted chevron down there kind of looks awesome.
And then the slightly weathered digicamo on the center stripe looks really good too.
Right? That is something else. Oh man, and a little bit of gray in the black of the letters and numbers.
Yep.
Just gives it like a
Yep.
gunmetal feel.
That, yeah.
Oh, it's
That's
solid.
what they're going for.
It's solid.
I love it.
I am laying it on a little bit thick. There's a plant manager that I work with went to West Point, so
gross.
He played sprint football there, so it's fun. It's fun.
You know what he and I have in common? We both got into West Point.
I was going to say that you both hate the Naval Academy, but
that too. These are facts.
Speaking of, these are Navy's uniforms.
So over the past about, I want to say 3 years, Navy has gone to getting these hand-painted helmets, and they are fantastic. Some of the details you can't really see here. You can kind of see a little bit of it up in the top of the guy looking at you. You've got a prismatic type paint that kind of multicolor, changes in the light like the radar.
So the exact opposite of monochrome?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. The whole helmet, I think, is painted in that prismatic type paint where it can change based on the shade. And then they're honoring the submarine service here. So they're going with the silent service. You can see it. I want to say something, but we'll get in trouble. It looks like we'll go with the not getting me in trouble route. It looks like Bullet Bill from Mario up on the helmet on the guy on the top left.
Wow.
You know what I think that looks like, and I can't say it. But no, these are silent service. So what you're going to see is on the back of the helmet. You can kind of see it here in the bottom left is the presence of the silent service on the, I guess, collar of the helmet. I don't know what you call that.
I mean, that's good enough. I know what you mean. So
yeah,
I don't know what to call it either.
These are also, so the uniforms themselves are very simplistic, but Navy goes all out on the helmets, and they have since they started doing the carrier designs. And these are fantastic.
Now, I have a question, and
yes.
I don't even know if you would know the answer to this for sure, but the Marine Corps patch on the pants.
Yes.
Is that for every player, or is that for players who are going to commission in the Marine Corps?
So, I'm not sure. I'll give you my best guess. With this being silent service, the Marines really don't go on boats too often or on subs. So I'm going to guess and say that, I'm going to guess and say that number 23 here is being commissioned into the Marine Corps. That being said, Most of these guys who are sophomores and even juniors won't know that that's where they're going yet. So I'd expect to
Right.
only see these on upperclassmen like your seniors and maybe a couple of the juniors.
Which I think that would be really cool if they only did it for those commissioning in the Marine Corps.
I agree.
Would add something to it, but maybe it'll be for everybody because the Naval Academy, of course, commissions into both.
They commission technically into everything. We do cross commission.
I mean, yeah, so does the Air Force Academy commissions and everywhere too, but it's not like you're going to see Army logos on Air Force uniforms. So
especially not in this game.
Right. Well, especially because Air Force isn't playing in this game.
Hey, we can still win this game.
That is legitimately not true.
No,
but
it is.
You're picking Air Force anyway.
Yeah, so let me explain how Air Force wins and where my pick actually goes here.
Okay.
If Navy wins this game, the Commander-in-Chief's trophy is shared officially, but it stays at the school that previously won it. Therefore, if Navy wins, Air Force wins. So my pick is disguised as Navy.
Yeah, so you're picking Navy. Okay.
But we're keeping the Air Force logo because Air Force wins.
So you're picking Navy.
No, I'm picking Air Force.
You're picking Navy.
I am rooting. No. Let's clear this up. I am rooting for Navy. I'm picking Air Force.
Because if Navy wins,
Air Force
that means you get a point. Because Navy won, and you were picking Navy.
No. Because if Navy wins, then Air Force wins, and because Air Force wins, I get a point.
Wait. let me get this straight. So Army wins, you get nothing.
I get nothing.
Okay. Step one down.
Okay.
Navy wins.
Yeah.
And that was your pick, so you get a point.
No. Because Navy wins, Air Force wins. Because Air Force wins, I get a point. I do love the SpongeBob reference there, though. That was fantastic.
I am very tempted to say that you only get a point if this game goes to overtime.
No.
Just like this is a...
Hold on. No. You and Bug have both done this. This is the one time this year I've done this.
It's not true. We forced you into it a couple times.
No. So... This is the one time I have elected to do this voluntarily. And I'm at least tying it to a team. And I'm not putting caveats on it like Bug did. Oh, well, if they're kicking at the north end zone.
So Bug is also picking Navy. Now, let's get this out in the open air. Army is the favorite in this game. Army has every reason to win this game, which means it most likely will be Navy who wins this game. But I'm picking Army because on a purely football analysis level, Army is the better team.
See, here's my thing, though. Army has only been the better team for the last 4 or 5 weeks. And what I mean by that is Army was 1-6 going into the Air Force game. Army has gone 4-0 since. Air Force went 0-4 since. But it's in those last 4 games that Army really pieced a lot of stuff together.
Sure,
so I can see.
Isn't that also a good thing for an Army?
Don't get me wrong. Yeah, no. What I'm saying is those stats that you're referencing, that Army looks like the better team, it's definitely a little hyperinflated because Army also has 2 games against FCS opponents. Navy played an American Athletic Conference gauntlet. And they're still coming out 5-6, 1 game away from bowl eligibility. Both of them. Navy just did it a little more consistently, except for week 0. We won't talk about week 0. But Navy's looked a lot better since that point too, and they've been building throughout the year, and they played better competition.
So Army did beat 2 FCS opponents, I grant you that, but they also beat 3rd place in the American and UTSA, and they beat Air Force coming off of an 8-game win streak. Like, this Army team is good.
What?
They just ran into LSU and Troy and were so beat up that they couldn't handle UMass after losing to 62-0 to LSU.
Like I said, where I'm coming from is I actually see this as a dead evenly matched game. I don't think one of these teams is the favorite. I think this game, the spread should be even. Like, and you pick your winner here. That's where I'm at on this game.
Well, it's not even. Last I looked, Army was a 3-point favorite, which is basically even, but it is a neutral site, so.
And this is a true neutral site, actually.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
this actually might be even distance from Annapolis and West Point. Maybe a little bit more in favor of West Point, but not much.
it's probably closer to West Point a little bit. But yeah, I guess if you're taking a direct route from Annapolis, it'd be pretty dang close to that as well. I
So
don't know. There haven't been too many non-true neutral site games. Even like Philadelphia, it's pretty relatively equidistant.
apparently the stadium doesn't quite know how to handle cadets, and they think everybody who goes to watch this game is going to be in uniform.
That is not true.
No, it's absolutely hilarious. I was laughing last night.
Why
when
do
my
you
wife
say
was
that they
talking
think
about
that?
it. Because my wife is like, everyone at the stadium is freaking out. They're like, what do we do if somebody in uniform tries to buy a drink? Give it to them. It's their choice. If they want to screw up their
Right?
career, that's what if a cadet, it just let them. That's not your job. Your job is to make money.
I mean, true. Also,
Are
they
are
probably
they
won't do that.
are they allowed to move around the stadium?
No,
Yes.
definitely not.
Yes,
Definitely not.
they are fans. Like, I don't.
Definitely.
It's just, and it's not my wife asking these questions. It's all of
Right.
her coworkers and stuff, and it's just like, oh my god, people, these guys are normal people. Like we're
Imagine how shocked they're going to be when one of these fan bases / cadet corps rushes the field after the game.
oh, I know. Oh, they can do that? Yeah. It's. I mean, are they supposed to? Maybe, maybe not. Not my decision. But can they? Yes.
I mean, the correct answer should be that the commandant of cadets is also going to rush the field and probably
Correct.
lead the way. That would
Correct.
be the right thing to do.
Dude, so my one story back against CSU back in 2014, I start moving forward and I look and the commandant step with me and I'm like, we're going. That's it. Sold.
Beautiful.
That was a wonderful memory of me storming the field at the academy on Thanksgiving Day.
Oh man. But after this game, that's it. There's no more regular season FBS football. There's actually no more regular season college football at all.
Stop.
The entire country.
Stop.
But we have 41 bowl games, and we have the semifinals, and we have the national championship for both the
we
FBS
don't.
and the FCS.
We don't have semifinals or national championship for the FBS.
Well, we'll still pick them. I mean, that's easy.
We just
to
won't.
do.
No, but I mean to watch. Like, we still won't have that. Yeah.
Of course not. It's fucking gross because they ruined it.
All right. Before we get into the last part of our show here, which is probably gonna be the longest part of our show, I need to ask because you called it out last week. The report that the NCAA is looking to make a new subdivision. Man, I haven't really heard much from you on it because I haven't really asked. I want to wait for the show. Talk to me about it. What you think?
I mean, it's been coming for a long time. And if you've been up on college football, you can kind of tell it's where things are headed. If you don't know the story, the president of the NCAA came out and announced they're looking into the creation of a new subdivision in Division I of college football that would allow every school in that new subdivision to set aside basically a salary pool, practically a salary pool that they would be able to pay players out of. So it would be a minimum dollar amount requirement per student athlete at the university. So the schools with more sports would pay in more. And in theory, there would be all kinds of legal restrictions on how much they're allowed to pay and who they have to pay and whatnot. I don't think it would be a straight $30,000 a year job for these student athletes, but I don't think it would be that equal. But I think that's the amount that's being speculated that would be required, or that was part of the statement, at least. That's still all going to have to be negotiated, so we don't really know. Either way, this would be like the life-saving maneuver by the NCAA, right? Because other than having your own division where colleges can pay players. Outside of that reality, you end up with schools just leaving the NCAA in order to do that anyway.
My take on it was more of shock because, and I mean, you had called it, because the way the wording came out with what they were planning is the schools with the extra resources, right? That's literally what they said, which indicates to me that this is exactly an SEC Big Ten type deal.
Right.
Even the Big 12 and the ACC would get left out of this. Their schools, they only have two money-making sports. Some of those schools only have one, and that's going to be football and basketball. Like,
thing is, some of the Big Ten and SEC schools only have one as well, but they're making so much money off those TV deals that they can still handle it.
Exactly.
So what would happen with this then is very, very potentially you could see a couple of the schools in the ACC and Big 12 still going ahead and joining. Probably at this point would have to be the Big Ten. I don't think the SEC is looking to expand at all anymore.
Yep.
So we're looking at like a Florida State, North Carolina, maybe Miami, maybe Clemson. I don't even know anybody else out of the Big 12 that would be in right now. And they would all be in the Big 10. And at some point, just call the division the Big 10 and the SEC. Like, we all know that's what it is.
Doesn't the SEC have invites out to Florida State, though, in Clemson?
No.
Okay, I thought I had seen that.
No. Everything, as far as everyone's allowed to know from the outside, is that the SEC is completely done expanding and is not even considering the possibility.
That's not true. There's more money in expansion. Therefore, there will be expansion.
Well, it's not up to the SEC. If there's more money in expansion, it's up to ESPN. And Disney's losing money hand over fist right now this year. So they're saying
which is why they put Alabama and Texas in the playoff.
Right. So
the mouse heard Florida State was getting in and made a call real quick.
Yeah. And the chair of the playoff committee's brother is on the board of ESPN. Anyway, that's all. Who knows?
Yep. All right, let's I think we got some fun things to talk about here. Let's jump into our next next part of this podcast.
Yeah. What a great segue. I
know. I really thought that went through.
Yeah, that was good. So this show, we're going to announce the finalists of the 2023 BDT Awards. Next show, we will have the winners for you. But in this podcast, we'll be reviewing the finalists. There are 4 finalists for each award. We're going Power 5, Group of 5, and FCS at each level. And we'll see what each award is as we get to it. If you've been around the show for a little while, it's these categories will be familiar to you.
They really don't change.
But, right, haven't changed the entire time, which is kind of cool. But we're going to start off here with the BDT 2023 Power 5 Quarterback of the Year finalists. Now, these are in alphabetical order by last name. If we get to schools, they will be in alphabetical order by the way the university represents themselves in athletics. That will make sense as we get to it. Just these are in alphabetical order.
Copy. Hit it.
Starting us off here, Jaden Daniels of LSU is a finalist for the Quarterback of the Year. Should be no surprise to anyone how much I've been talking about how great he is.
Look, the fact that he's a Heisman finalist on a 9-3 year for LSU is remarkable, because usually your Heisman voters love winners. And if your team's not winning 11, 12 games in the regular season, they really don't want to deal with you. And he leads the FBS in just about every major quarterback statistic. Man, this is a no-brainer to have him on our finalist list.
Except for passing yards. But I will say there are 3 seasons in FBS history where a quarterback has thrown for over 3,000 yards and rushed for over 1,000 yards.
Are they all Jaden Daniels?
One of them is Jaden Daniels this year. The other two are Lamar Jackson, which
who won the Heisman also without winning very many games.
Right. His best win in the year that he won the Heisman was actually a loss to Clemson. So
Nice.
So Jaden Daniels is in that category of so dang good, we have to recognize it, even though the team is fine. they're fine. They would not be fine without him, but with him, they're fine.
Which I think is, when we bring up the Heisman, I think that's more of a statement in favor of is if you take the player away. That's how I voted in a lot of these, like when we were talking about our finalists. If you take the player away, is the team as good? That's how I looked at it in a lot of ways.
Next up here on the screen already, Quinn Ewers of Texas. Now, he was hurt for a portion of the season, which basically disqualified him from the Heisman Trophy.
Yep.
But we're the BDT. We do
real recognize real here, and Quinn Ewers has real talent. Again, this is another situation of take him off the team. Does Texas have 11 wins on the season, 12 now with the conference title? I don't think so.
I don't even think look like it. Like close. They did win with Malik Murphy, but it wasn't
they looked
pretty.
Fine. Yeah, they looked fine. Man, Quinn Ewers is just, he's got that talent, and I know it hurts you when I say that because he left Ohio State way too early. But what you gonna do?
I mean, I knew he wasn't going to stay as soon as he got here, so it is what it is.
Well,
it was obvious.
If he came a year, if he didn't come a year early, he might have stayed, but he reclassed, and that's what screwed that over.
Next up, Michael Penix Jr. of the University of Washington does lead the FBS in that passing yards stat I was talking about a minute ago.
He's number 2 in everything else behind Jaden Daniels.
Pretty much. What he's not number 2 in at all is rushing yards. He has negative 18 rushing yards in the season.
Good.
So take that. But 3 rushing touchdowns. So he ran backwards for 3 touchdowns. That's awesome.
Oh, the NCAA still counts sacks as rushing yards, don't they?
They do.
That's disgusting.
Washington's offensive line didn't really allow that many sacks. So
they allowed enough to make negative 18 yards.
I mean, yeah, what that's saying is he didn't run that often.
I know. I know.
That's really what that means. Michael Penix is a left-handed quarterback, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a factor.
I also concur.
Also, his name is Penix, which is great.
And unfortunate all at the same time.
I'm sure it's Bug's favorite quarterback. Here the big nudes in the DMs.
You did it again.
All right. Last year is Bug's actual favorite quarterback this year, which is Jordan Travis. I know there's a glaring omission in Bo Nix.
He's our honorable mention. I did put him in my final.
Here's the thing. Jordan Travis was so good that without them, everyone thought Florida State wouldn't amount to anything. So much so that even after they went 2-0 without Jordan Travis, they got left out of the playoff as an undefeated Power 5 team. Brutal.
Yep.
Also, Jordan Travis really is that good because his touchdown interception ratio is the best in the FBS. Only 2 interceptions the entire season. Also has 7 rushing touchdowns to his name. That's a big part of his game. That rhymes slightly, and it brings me great pain.
It brought him great pain too.
Wow, that's.
I'm just being real here. Look, man, I hope, in all honesty, I hope he heals up well. This dude is an unreal talent. He deserves to be here. He deserves to be on the Heisman finalist list. Florida State deserves to be in the college football playoff. Everything that's happened because of that one play, realistically, is unsatisfactory in my opinion.
Just completely brutal. But Jordan Travis has been an incredible story through his collegiate career and one of the better seasons in all the FBS. We're going to recognize him as such.
Yep.
Moving on, Group of 5 quarterback of the year. Again, alphabetical order means we start with Joey Aguilar of Appalachian State. Now, Aguilar maybe doesn't have the best time, like throwing interceptions and stuff, but man, he can sling it.
Aguilar is one of
Occasionally to the
those.
other team, but holy shit, when he hits this correct target, it's beautiful.
So I know you're one of those guys, and I respect it, that absolutely hates professional player comparisons. But if you're looking for a professional player comparison to Joey Aguilar's play style, you're looking at your Brett Favre's, your Ryan Fitzpatrick's, your even Josh Allen's, where they're going to chuck it. They're going to chuck it deep. Now, I don't know who's coming down with it, but somebody is.
That might actually be too harsh. He doesn't throw that many interceptions. I mean, Brett
He's
Favre's
not in the NFL yet.
record-breaking interceptions. That's fair. I'll give you that.
He's a gunslinger, man. If the ball's going up, it's going 60 yards downfield. Somebody's coming down with it.
I just think it's very fitting that one of the teams with the most electric offenses in the sport and a team where they never felt out of any game because their quarterback could sling it 70 yards if he felt like it.
Except the Sun Belt Championship game.
Well, true. But that quarterback's going to be in our finalists for the Group of 5 quarterback of the year. Next up here is Seth Hennigan, the University of Memphis.
What is with the kissy duck face?
I know. It was too good. It was too good to pass up on. Slightly fewer passing yards and fewer touchdowns than Joey Aguilar, but more rushing yards.
But also less interceptions.
And more rushing touchdowns. So Seth Hennigan is a little bit more of a creator of offense outside the pocket than Aguilar is, which sounds crazy to say because Aguilar has to scramble all around and juke and jive 40 times before he chucks the ball 90 yards down the field. Seth Hennigan doesn't do that exactly. But, man, he makes this offense tick. And Memphis would not at all be the same team without Seth Hennigan back there.
And that's where my vote for Seth Hennigan came in, or my thoughts on him came in as one of our top 4, was that this offense would not be anywhere near what it is without him. And, I mean, Memphis would be real struggling without him this year.
Moving on and moving up the leaderboard in quarterback rushing yards, Diego Pavia, and I've been calling him Pavia for like almost all season.
Dude, we got to check these faces before we select these photos. He looks scared.
I'm doing it intentionally. I find the funniest looking photo I can find sometimes. That's on me.
Your coach is Jerry Kill.
But yeah, Pavia is one of the toughest quarterbacks I've seen in my lifetime. Like of like tough as nails quarterback plays I can think of off the top of my head. My mind jumps to Andrew Luck trucking that linebacker while he was at Stanford.
Fair.
And Diego Pavia fucking suplexing a DB because
he threw an interception.
Because he could. It wasn't even. He didn't even have the interception. He just fucking denied the guy the will to live. He said, "Fuck you."
Dishonor on you. Dishonor on your family.
He's also short as hell. So Tug, you can relate.
I can.
And
dude,
he's
I'm
really
telling
good at
you,
football.
everything
you cannot relate.
Everything you just said, though, and then you add in that he's short as hell makes sense. Everybody who's under 5'7" struggles with small guy syndrome, small dog syndrome. Like, we will fight you.
5'8". He's not.
Okay, anybody under 5'9".
Okay,
they're tough, and they want to prove that they're tough because they feel like they have to be tough. So it's all a measuring contest.
What are we measuring?
You don't want to know.
I think I do know off that right there. Moving right along. And once again, moving up the leaderboard in quarterback rushing yards this season in the Group of 5 is Caden Salter. 250 passing yards shy of being the 4th quarterback with 3,000 passing yards and 1,000 rushing yards in a season. Broke the 1,000 rushing yards pretty easily. Great touchdown interception ratio passing the ball. The best on this list for sure. Also, those rushing yards. The thing holding him back statistically is the passing yards. Compared to these other guys, he's not exactly your sling it deep kind of a guy. But man, he can get out of the pocket and run like nobody's business. And Liberty's offense was very fun this year. At some point, I think we got to say Jamie Chadwell, his offensive scheme, it is a little bit unusual, but it works for making offenses fun as shit.
It's an unorthodox offense that is built around the players he has, which is fantastic. And you can see it because the players have fun in it. It works because the players are having fun with it. And I mean, Liberty just went 12-0. You gotta give the kid something there. 2,750 yards and 1,000 on the ground. That's not a bad year. Like, I'll take that any day of the week.
Not even 12-0, 13-0.
Not 13-0.
13-0. Moving along here, FCS Quarterback of the Year finalists. Starting us off, again, alphabetical order, is Mark Gronowski of South Dakota State.
The other SDSU.
Holy shit, I can't believe I just did that.
You pulled a me. Look, so
not exactly going to light up the stat sheet every single week, in part because he doesn't have to. There are games where he can hand the ball off to his running back, and it works out just fine. But when you need a guy to make a play, it's hard to find a better player in all the FCS than Mark Gronowski. He's going to find a way to get it done, either through the air or on the ground himself, and is another one of those quarterbacks, just tough as nails.
Look, Mark Gronowski is one of those players that really he is what made, and not this past year, the year before, last year, he is what made South Dakota State's offense two-dimensional and really took them and put them on the map. He's able to keep that this year, this time without his big receiving threat at tight end, Tucker Kraft. Still insane that they were able to do it again to this point this year. And it's even more surprising that he's not the only one on our finalists lists from this offense, which tells you just how good these guys are.
Next up here, you know how much I love limiting interceptions. CJ Montez, the quarterback for Fordham, is the best at that, limiting interceptions. 26 touchdowns, only 1 interception the entire year on 3,000 yards of passing. That is incredible. Unfortunately for him, the defense sucked ass. So they only won like half their games. But it's the BDT, which means that we can look beyond simple things like win-loss record and find players who are just playing out their damn minds and doing a great job at it. CJ Montez looked phenomenal this season. Huge shout-out recognition for CJ Montez.
Yep.
Honestly, he performed better than I expected him to. And the first week of the season was like at expectation. I was like, man, CJ Montez is going to struggle a little bit his first year starting. But then he didn't. He turned it on. Turned it on. It's pretty good. Next here, Reese Poffenbarger for University of Albany.
Look at that little bit of beer gut hanging out the jersey there. That's primo quarterback right there.
I mean, that's a very small, I wouldn't call that a beer gut. Jeez, being harsh.
Look, I mean, anytime your team outperforms what they're expecting to, we had Albany kind of in the middle of the CAA this year. They come out tied for conference champions of the regular season, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I mean, there is no conference championship
game,
so they're just tied as champs.
Yeah.
And then they beat Richmond and they beat Villanova in the regular season. So now they've claimed the definitive undisputed CAA title.
Anytime you come out like that, a lot of it does come down to what the offense is doing. And this offense has been high flying all year. And a lot of that starts here under center. Man. And what a name. Reese Poffenbarger. Like, let's go.
Next here, Matthew Sluka.
He's your. I'll let you talk about him. This is your baby.
I mean, not literally.
We don't know that.
That's creepy. Matthew Sluka is one of those quarterbacks that, he's not going to work in the NFL. I'm just being real. Holy shit, is he a fun college quarterback? And sometimes that's all you need. This Holy Cross team was 4-6. And then Matthew Sluka happened, and Jalen Coker happened, and Jordan Fuller happened. This offense turned around immediately. And Sluka is a huge part of that. He's not exactly going to light it up with passing yards, but he runs for almost as many yards as he throws for. And the offense definitively runs through Matthew Sluka every given Saturday.
Yep.
The entire game runs through what number 9 can do. And Sluka is transferring out of Holy Cross now, hoping to find an FBS opportunity somewhere, which apparently he's already had like 24 offers. So he'll have some opportunities.
Coach
Honestly,
Matt Rule's trying to get a
surprised.
cheap quarterback, not the $1.5-2 million quarterback he was talking about.
Wouldn't be surprised if he follows his head coach to James Madison. Honestly.
That's kind of what I'm expecting too.
Would be kind of cool. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, Sluka has been one of the most fun players to watch in the FCS for the past 2 seasons. So how does that rank him as a quarterback of the year? We'll find out. But he had to be one of our finalists. I insisted.
You really did. You've been talking about him so much that I just immediately eyes glued to it anyway. So,
but now quarterbacks out of the way. Let's talk about the offensive players.
talk about the rest of the offense
of the year. Everybody else on the offense, not really. We're talking about skill position players here. Offensive line of the year will be coming up shortly. Offensive player of the year. I'm going to start us off with a name you probably didn't expect to see because he was out for an extended period of time in the season. Once again, we're the BDT. We do what we want, and we recognize real. We know ball, as we like to say.
when Brock Bowers is on the field, he is a game changer. You must game plan for him. You need to keep him in mind, and that's what drives this year. Now, at the beginning of the year, he wasn't that efficient. He got injured. Georgia relooked at their offense, and he became insanely more efficient when he returned from injury. And I attribute that in large part to the fact that they realized it didn't all have to go through him, but he is the dude when you need to make something happen. He becomes the dude there.
Yeah, I mean, Ladd McConkey had a great season as far as Georgia wide receivers go.
Yep.
When was the last time a Georgia receiver had that good of a year? Maybe AJ Green. But it's the Brock Bowers show, and we all knew that last year too.
Yep.
But this year, definitively so. Even though he was out for an extended period of time, it's still something was missing when he was gone.
Yep.
And holy shit, did they find it again when he came back. Next offensive player of the year finalist is Ollie Gordon of Oklahoma State, the leader in all of the FBS in rushing yards and second in the FBS in rushing touchdowns. Oklahoma State definitively guaranteed would not be anywhere close to that Big 12 title game without a player of Ollie Gordon's caliber in the backfield.
Look, man, I'm not Coach Mike Gundy out there, but Spencer Sanders ain't it. But their running back coach is on a tear here. Between the last few running backs to come through, Ollie Gordon is absolutely the man on this Cowboys offense. He will be probably next year too. Man, you real have to recognize real. You put up that many yards. I think he was averaging 6.7, 6.8 a carry, just shy of the nicest average out there. Absolutely,
which is insane.
Yes.
Okay, over 6.5 yards a carry is nuts, and he's one of the leaders in carries in the FBS too.
Yeah.
Like he's doing it consistently at an extremely high level.
Correct.
Insane.
Man, real have to recognize real, and Ollie Gordon's real.
Which means Marvin Harrison Jr.
I'll
had
let
to be
you
on
talk
here.
about him. I'll let you have this one.
I mean, everybody knows the deal. He's got to be one of the freakiest wide receiver prospects you've ever seen in your life. Just watching him play, he can do things that you don't think are possible with the laws of physics. And he figures out a way to do it anyway.
Because they're not, by the way. I've seen some
They're-
of these things.
They are when Marvin Harrison Jr. has put his mind to it. That's what it comes down to. No, he did not lead the FBS in receiving yards or receptions. He did tie for the lead in touchdowns, though, because he just figured out a way to make the most of the plays he was given.
Yep.
And when Kyle McCord slung one out there, 18 yards off target, number 18 found his way there anyway.
Well, that's why. It was
Because-
18. If it was 17, he might not have made it.
No, he would have made it.
19,
He would have made it.
19, you've been a little short. 17, he'd have been a little long. 18, just right.
I wish I picked a different number. Fuck you.
Come on, man. You had to know that's where that was going.
I didn't, because I didn't plan this bit. Holy shit. Fuck you. Last finalist for the Offensive Player of the Year in the Power 5 is Rome Odunze, wide receiver for Washington. Now, might be a little bit controversial, some of the names that we left off here, but Rome Odunze is one of those special talents that when you watch him play, you're like, holy shit, why is he not more talked about as one of the best players in the entire world? This is a legitimate talent at the receiver position. Maybe even better in some areas than Marvin Harrison Jr. is, as far as like just pure speed and separation ability. Marvin Harrison Jr. makes that to where it doesn't matter, but Rome Odunze doesn't have that problem because he's too far away from the defensive back. So it'd be a real tough toss-up if we're going these two head-to-head. But we have two other players on the screen too. So finalists are set for Offensive Player of the Year.
I was going to say, Romo Dunze brings up the question for us as the BDT guys, as we're going to sit here and vote on these of what came first, Michael Penix Jr. or Romo Dunze, the chicken or the egg. Frankly, it doesn't matter. Neither of them are as good without each other.
Yeah,
but
that's true. Michael Penix definitely came first, but
you know what I mean, right? Like they both elevate the play of each other, which is why they're both on our list here.
Michael Penix is like a 2,500 yard passer without Odunze and a 4,500 yard passer with Odunze.
Whereas Marvin Harrison elevates Kyle McCord's play, but Kyle McCord doesn't elevate Marvin Harrison's play. That's the
Kyle McCord doesn't elevate anything.
He elevates the ball.
Go be the best quarterback Syracuse has ever had. Yeah, and fuck yourself.
Is he going to Syracuse?
I don't know.
Oh. Dude, you're so in tune with the recruiting wire sometimes that you say things like that. I'm like, oh my God, it's happening. Like, I just trust you that much.
That'd be a fascinating move if that happens.
I like the idea of Kyle McCord to Iowa. That would just make me laugh.
Legitimately, he would
be
the third best quarterback that they have. I know that's hard to hear. It might legitimately be true. Anyway,
let's get to the group of five here.
Group of five offensive players of the year. Starting us off, we're going back to the Liberty Flames here, folks, because Quentin Cooley is one of the best running backs in the country.
Also over 6.5 yards a carry.
Yeah, well, actually 6.2.
Oh, just under. God forbid.
With 16 touchdowns on fewer attempts than most of the guys who were up there with that many touchdowns and as many yards.
The rest of the
rushing
attempts went to
Caden Salter.
Yeah.
Right. His quarterback took him away from him. But Quentin Cooley made the most of his opportunities, and damn, he was good. The Liberty had a phenomenal offense. Yes, they went up against bad competition. Make of that what you will. But this offense was very productive. Quentin Cooley was a big part of that. Our next finalist is Torrey Horton, wide receiver for Colorado State. Now, Torrey Horton, I don't know how to describe it other than he's just one of the best jump ball receivers I've seen in the group of 5 ever.
Torrey Horton is the type of guy you throw a 50-50 ball to, and he comes down with it 80% of the time. And that changes the game, especially for a team like Colorado State, who doesn't necessarily have the greatest quarterback, who's going to miss the placement. But Torrey Horton is coming down with that football regardless. And that's why he sits here. He's not going to wow you with stats. His stats are above average, but they're not fantastic. It's the way he elevates the play and helps that Colorado State offense move is why he lands here. He is the key player on that Colorado State offense.
Yet again, another instance of maybe looking a little bit past just the pure stats of things. Finding the best players out there. Next up here is the exact opposite of that conversation, because I'm talking about the running back for Troy, Kimani Vidal.
I would not want to hit him. He looks angry. He looks very angry, and I don't want to get in his way when he's angry.
So Ollie Gordon, I just said, led the FBS in rushing yards. It was Kimani Vidal leading the FBS in rushing yards for almost the entire season. Ollie Gordon passed him just barely at the end there. But Kimani Vidal also set an FBS conference championship game record, regardless of conference, for both rushing yards and rushing touchdowns in a conference championship game.
Was it like 305?
Something like that.
I remember random things, just not names.
I remember 5 touchdowns for sure.
Yeah.
I legitimately don't remember how many yards he had in the conference championship game.
You continue. You continue talking. I'll stop distracting you.
233.
Not quite 300.
So maybe it was a Sun Belt record for rushing yards, but it was a Power 5. Not a Power 5, FBS record.
He rushed so good, we promoted the Sun Belt to the Power 5.
I mean, the Pac-12 is not there anymore, so
fair.
The Fun Belt, the Power Belt,
the Power Belt. That's what the new CFP championship trophy is. It's just the Power Belt.
No, that's the Big 12 championship MVP award.
I saw that.
Presented by Undertaker. Holy shit. No, Kimani Vidal was awesome to watch this year. Equally important to Troy's success as the entirety of the defense, right? The defense plus Kimani Vidal, you're winning games no matter who else you have on the entire team. So Kimani Vidal, awesome season. And what a great finish of the year for Troy as well, winning that Sun Belt Conference. Our last finalist for the Group of 5 Offensive Player of the Year is wide receiver Ricky White, UNLV, who actually does lead the FBS in receiving yards for a Group of 5 player. I'll grant you that.
Isn't he up there in yards per reception? Isn't his yards per reception like 20, 25?
17.1.
Yeah, close enough. That's insane. Every time you're so what this comes down to is every time you're thrown to this guy, not every time because it's not yards per target, that's yards per reception. Right. But every time he catches the ball, he's down the field.
Right. Every time he catches the ball, it's a first down and a half.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Feels thrown to Ricky White. Actually doesn't have that many touchdowns on the season, only 7. Especially when comparing to some of our other wide receiver finalists across here.
That's because Barry Odom's a sneaky little bugger and is still a true down home. I'm on the goal line. I'm a rush it type guy.
Yeah.
Ricky White will get you to the 1. Coach Odom's going to run that ball in. I guarantee it. Every time.
With like 4 different players in rotation running the ball too.
Correct.
Don't give anybody the individual accolades here. We can't be doing that.
No, that's
but we're doing it anyway.
Yards per reception.
We're doing it anyway because Ricky White is just that dang good when you actually watch UNLV play. And fantastic season for UNLV. Came up just short in that Mountain West title game. But wow, what a turnaround for the Rebels.
Wild.
And that brings us to the FCS Offensive Player of the Year for everyone except quarterbacks.
And
starting us off is Jalen Coker, one of the guys I already mentioned briefly with that Holy Cross offense. Jalen Coker has got to be one of the most prolific wide receivers in the FCS level. Just holy shit. He is. When we talk about Matthew Sluka, I said he really doesn't have many passing yards, only like 1,700 passing yards. When you compare it to the other finalists for quarterback of the year, that's not that many passing yards. Then you look at Jalen Coker, you're like, how the hell does this guy have like over 1,100 receiving yards? What the fuck? Where'd that come from?
Matt
He
Sluka.
is the entirety of the passing offense, it turns out, and he's really good at it. So when you can be the one guy that the entire back end of the defense focuses on, and you still win basically every play, you're a talented wide receiver. That's what that comes down to.
He had these defenses trying to play Canadian football with 12 guys out there. That's what this came down to.
Right. The next here is another Jackrabbit. Yeah, this is Isaiah Davis, running back for the Jacks here. We have talked about him before in the vein that there's some games that feels like he doesn't need to be on. And
it's the same story as with Mark Gronowski. It's just when one of them is on, the other takes a game off, and when one takes a game off, the other is on. This is just the tandem that they have, and it's how the team stays fresh.
Even still, Isaiah Davis finishes with like 1,200 yards on the ground and a whole lot of touchdowns, because in the games that he's on, he'll run for like 208 touchdowns or whatever.
Yeah.
Insane. 30 touchdowns a game.
He also looks like a dude I don't want to tackle. Just looking at those eyes. Nope, I'm good.
I don't recommend that you tackle anybody because you are small.
Small.
Small. With an O. Small.
Yeah, small. All right.
Gotta move on. Another
Hey.
Holy Cross player, because we can't get enough of that offense. It's the best part of the team by far.
Why is this team not in the postseason? All of their players are on the finalists. All their offensive players are on the.
Yeah, maybe it's because their defense gave up 90 points a game, felt like. Anyway, this is Jordan Fuller, which is a name that might be familiar to football fans, except this one's white. So, different guy.
Damn it.
And he's a running back for Holy Cross.
And he gets the other yards we haven't talked about for Holy Cross's offense.
Now, I'm going to give everybody a peek behind the curtain. I did not vote for Jordan Fuller as one of my finalists. Bug didn't either, actually. Tug, you were the only vote cast for Jordan Fuller, but you put him at like first place for yourself, so he got in the finalists anyway. What were you thinking with this one? Because
I got to pull it up to see what I was looking at.
Okay. Because I believe you that you were looking at something definitive.
Yeah. So when I'm looking at this for a running back, 156 carries for 1046 yards, that's outstanding. 6.7 a carry.
That's not many carries for a lot of yards.
That's what I'm saying, right? That's fantastic at 6.7. Then you add on top his 18 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He was the bell cow on the goal line, pulling it in. Yeah, is that impressive? No, but you have that big of an effect on this offense. I'm going to give you some love. Is what that comes down to for me. Fair.
No, he was on my short list, but he didn't make my top 4. But I understand, and we'll see what everybody else has to say.
Hold on, over 3 years so far, homie has turfed the ball 0 times.
All right, he's definitive winner.
This is ball security at its finest.
Got to hold on to the balls. I only got 2 of them. Can't let them go.
Hold on. The more I dig into this, the better it gets. His average, or his longest run in his career, 3-year career, is 14 yards. So he's not just averaging 6.7 a carry. He is legitimately getting you 6 or 7 yards a carry. The more I look into this, the better it gets. All
right, our next finalist for the Offensive Player of the Year is going to be a little bit surprising to some folks, I'm sure. This is definitively the best offensive player for the University of South Dakota. Who am I talking about? It is their tight end, J.J. Gilbreth, who, holy shit, he is legitimately great at the tight end position. Not only as a receiver, but also as a blocker. This guy is one to watch out for. Really, really good receiver in his own right, too. Not going to take that away from him. But hey, what a solid addition when he lines up online and run support as well. And all around, he's one of the guys you just want to have on your offense, which means we went and found him and put him on our Offensive Player of the Year finalist list.
So one thing I'm tracking based on ESPN is JJ Galbraith, not Gilbreth.
You're right.
Number 2, the stats that highlight this for me, his touchdowns aren't great. He's not the most prevalent receiver on the field. He only has 36 receptions on the year. But those 36 receptions did go for 579 yards. That's massive for a tight end. This is a blocking tight end who can get out in open space and make a play happen. That's what we love to see.
Very much so. Very much so. Moving right along, though, Power 5 Defensive Player of the Year across all levels of the defense. Starting us off in the defensive backfield, this is Billy Bowman Jr., the University of Oklahoma.
61 total tackles, 6 INTs, 4 passes defensed, absolutely all over the field. They don't want to target him, but they have to. He takes the ball away, or he gives up a pass and shuts the play down right there. You can't look for a much better DB out there than what you got right here in Billy Bowman.
6 interceptions, 4 passes batted down. That's a guy who knows how to get his hands on the football when it's in his area.
Yep.
Pretty impressive stuff. On the defensive line, though, we have Leatu Latu, who I know lit up the stat sheet in the Pac-12, dominated at that defensive end spot.
He doesn't get a ton of tackles. He's got 49 on the year for a defensive end. That's not.
But all of them are in the backfield.
But all of them are in the backfield. A lot of them are sacks.
Right.
Couple forced fumbles in there and a couple interceptions just to top it off.
Oof.
Man, out of the Power 5 teams, I believe he leads the Power 5 in sacks. He does not lead the FBS in sacks. I believe we're getting to that here in a bit. But still absolutely insane year for Leatu Latu.
Next up here, moving to the interior of the defensive line.
Big man in the middle, nose tackle, Vince Wilfork style player here in Tavondre Sweat. I love it.
Who you might recognize from the prospect preview series. I picked like the one game where he was a little bit down the entire year to highlight him as a prospect. Other than that, he's been like one of the best players in all of college football.
So his stats won't jump off the stat sheet at you. I'm looking at him over here. 42 total tackles, 2 sacks, 0 forced fumbles, 0 interceptions. But that's not going to tell you the story of an interior defensive lineman.
Right.
This man is lining up, nose up the center the entire game in Texas's down home true 3-4 defense. And he is eating the blocks from the center and both of the guards at some times just to shut him down. A true nose guard who is going to plug up holes, and that is his entire job, and he does it really well.
Another fun stat, he very nearly caught a touchdown this year, which would have been awesome.
We all love us a thick 6 here at the BDT.
And our last Power 5 Defensive Player of the Year finalist is linebacker Nathaniel Watson of Mississippi State, one of the leaders in Power 5 in sacks and in tackles.
Yeah, he has 35 solo tackles, but that doesn't tell you the story because he has 102 assisted. So this man is putting his hat on the ball every play. At least that's how it feels. Add on the interception, couple forced fumbles, and 10 sacks. That's a down hole middle linebacker that I'd love to have on my team. I'll be honest with you.
You said 10 sacks.
Yes.
That's really crazy.
I know, dude.
I only have 1.
I've only got 1.
That's nuts.
Valid.
All right. Group of 5 defensive players of the year finalists. We're starting off with Cedarius Barfield out of San Diego State, not South Dakota State.
Hey, we got it right this time. Wait, that's weird. San Diego's not a state.
What?
I know.
Are we sure?
Positive.
Damn.
Anyway.
No, I know Cedarius Barfield is all over the place. I believe 4 interceptions on the season, and really makes his presence felt and run support as well. Comes downfield and hits dudes. This is a picture right after he hit a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Love it.
Looks like that might have been Torrey Horton, CSU. So
Get wrecked.
So when I look at this, again, 54 total tackles, which is what you want to see out of your safety. Not too many, but they're going to secure the tackle for you. 1 forced fumble, 4 interceptions, 3 passes defense. That is a true center field safety that you want on your team, who, like you said, Doug, can come down, play, and run support.
Kind of crazy, though, because our next safety actually beats like all of those stats, purely statistically speaking.
You're
I'm
not
talking
wrong.
about Devin Grant from Buffalo. I remember he was +1 on interceptions, plus like 20 on tackles.
Yep,
But also, it is Buffalo. So he was on the field way longer because that offense sucked.
He's got 2 pick sixes on the season, 167 total interception yards. Man, this dude is also all over the field, and he's fast. So even if he's on the wrong hash and you throw it opposite side, he can still get to that football, which is insane to think about.
Right. I mean, that's what you look for in a safety. It's hard to find, but it's what you look for sure.
Yep.
Devin Grant delivered. Next up here is Jalen Green. I know you were talking about looking for the leaders in sacks, the FBS level. Jalen Green was the leader for a very long time. Did not end up atop that leaderboard. We actually don't have the leader in sacks in the FBS on our finalist list here. You have to think, though, Jalen Green got hurt with a season-ending knee injury at the beginning of November. He missed 3 games for James Madison. Holy shit. If he was kept the pace that he was going on, he was coming down the pipeline at breaking the FBS record for sacks in a season.
Yep.
Because he had 15 and a half in only 9 games. Jalen Green was a menace this season.
Look, and that doesn't even tell half the story. So we'll go, he had 15 total sacks, right? He had 15 and a half, but we'll count 15 to round the number. He had 24 total tackles. 24 solo tackles. He had 9 tackles alone that were not sacks. And I know I'm oversimplifying his statistics there, but
yeah, a little bit.
My man lived in the backfield. He was in the quarterback's hip pocket the entire game, every game he played.
That's actually really funny. He didn't tackle you unless you were the quarterback, and then he tackled you every play.
That's what it feels like, man. 1 interception, 24 yards for a touchdown, and man, he can make plays happen too.
And then we move to the middle of the defense. Exactly, the middle linebacker, Matt Salopek of Miami of Ohio.
Oh, I love his style of play, man. You know me, I'm a huge fan of the 4-3 style defense here.
Oh, yeah.
72 total, 72 solo tackles this year, 134. Man, that defense did their job and funneled everything to him, and he was that sure tackler that you're looking for in the middle of that defense. It doesn't get much better than that when it comes to middle linebacker play.
Not only that, but a pretty heavy-handed hitter too. Like he would lay you out. You came up the middle on him. Matt Salopek is just he's a fun linebacker to watch.
He looks like he studied Ray Lewis tape. That's what he looks like.
So a pure killer of the middle of that defense.
Yep, literally.
Well, literally for one of those guys.
Hey, well,
Matt Salopek.
We don't know that. We don't know that.
But we're pretty sure. Moving on. The FCS Defensive Player of the Year finalists, starting off with another one of those classic linebacker types.
Oh my God. We just talked shit about Holy Cross's defense.
Well, here's the best part of it is Jacob Dobbs.
Here is the defense. His name is
Yeah,
Jacob
basically.
Dobbs.
Well, actually, that's pretty much legitimately true.
I love how you-
They funneled everything to Jacob Dobbs because he was the only one on the defense who could tackle, and so
He did that
it's
really well.
reflected in the stats. Right.
He even added a couple of sacks to his name too. 5 total, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 64 solo tackles, 122 total. I mean, yeah, this man's all over the field.
Yeah, they literally asked him to do everything because he's the only one who knew how to do anything.
Yeah, correct.
So, but he did it pretty well. Just not good enough to win, games all by himself. That's
Yep.
unfortunate. Turns out it is a team sport, but individually, Jacob Dobbs was awesome this year. Next up is PJ Jules of Southern Illinois. Legitimately, when I watched him play live, it's just one of those guys you can tell a difference when you're watching a team and one guy stands out to you almost every single play. It tells you that guy's probably pretty good. That was PJ Jules all year. Just safety all over the place, all over the field, every play, making all kinds of incredible plays, catching up to guys from behind.
He is
always at the right angle,
Look, all of his stats look fantastic. 43 total, 43 solo tackles, 96 total. That's a lot for your safety. But
Right.
he is also the stereotype of a defensive back. Really good at defending the pass, really bad at catching them. 10 passes defense, so he got his hands on them. 0 interceptions on the season. That's the one thing I would like to see improved. But absolutely fantastic season for PJ Jules here. The one knock I would have is, man, you got to take that ball away for me.
Just put 2 hands on it next time instead of one. Try that.
Get me 2 interceptions with those 8 passes defense, and I'm elated as a coach.
Right. On the defensive line, Anton Junkic, defensive end for Albany. One of those guys that just lit up the stat sheet with sacks, especially, and it's hard to look away.
Look, it's the strip sacks, man.
Right.
He's coming out with 4 forced fumbles. That is some of the highest on the list I've seen. That is the most amount of forced fumbles I've seen. This man lives in the backfield, has a nose for the football, and likes to take it away. He is a true hound, if you will, a Great Dane of them all.
Wow. Interesting.
But man, and he didn't just do it with sacks either. 44 total tackles, 26 of those are solo, 11 total sacks. That's a good season.
10 more than I have. It's pretty good.
9 more than the 2 of us combined.
Wow. Insane. Another linebacker type who could do it all. This is Billy Schaefer of Lafayette, who you also might recognize from the Prospect Preview Series. Billy Schaefer was asked to do a little bit of everything for Lafayette this year, and he delivered at basically everything all the time.
Yep. 66 total tackles, 8 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. 44 of those tackles are solo tackles. Man lived in the middle of that field, got everything fed to him, and then also came off the edge and had a few sacks on his name too.
I know he lined up at every linebacker position that you could think of.
Which, if you ask me, actually helps his draft stock, because as an NFL guy, if I'm looking at you and I can use you to fill one slot on my roster and put you into any of my linebacker positions, man, that's invaluable what I can do based off that.
Love to see him bulk up just a little bit and just become a pure edge rusher.
Yeah, no, that'd be fair too.
That'd be scary. He's so good at it. Just let him loose. Gain like 15, 20 pounds of muscle and just tear it up. Be so much fun. Yep. But he's also good at just plugging up gaps and, being that linebacker that gets funneled to, and maybe the occasional interception too. So, let him live. He's still a finalist even without that extra 15, 20 pounds playing on the edge. Moving on here, this is the Power 5 offensive line of the year. Now we get to alphabetical order by institution, which means we're starting with...
That is a T, Doug. All right, University of Michigan, I'll come out here and I'll say it, man. They were the offensive line this year has taken a huge hit at this point. I forget homeboy's name who broke his leg in the game.
Zach Zinter.
Yeah, Zach Zinter. This unit's not quite... Tell me you want to move on with that. Tell me you want to move on. Look, but what this comes down to is this unit was not heavily penalized this year. They did not give up a lot of pressures. They moved the ball on the ground, which is a full unit project here at the Power 5 level. Absolutely great season for these guys. They kept everything in check. And I feel like I'm going to say a lot of these things the same for a lot of these schools because they did a lot of the same things. Hit it.
What is probably most impressive to me, legitimately speaking highly of the University of Michigan offensive line, they kind of did it without any individual standout, surefire,
they played as a
NFL
unit.
Draft kind of a guy. Maybe Zach Zinter was that guy, but
he's not anymore.
Right. Unfortunately, because holy shit, that was brutal. But they play so well together as a unit that it's the sum greater than its parts kind of a deal. It's very impressive what they can do year in and year out at this point, which sucks, but it's also true. So moving on, this is Notre Dame, who does have one of those surefire top end of the draft kind of a guys at left tackle with Joe Alt. But everywhere else, they're just plain solid. And they can still move guys anywhere they want to.
Over about the past 4 or 5 years, Notre Dame has been working at becoming offensive lineman university. And that's still paying dividends to this day. It feels like every year, either a guard or a tackle out of Notre Dame is reported as one of the top offensive line prospects in the draft. That still holds true to this day with Joe Alt.
It is interesting that they let up quite a few sacks actually on the season to be one of our finalists as offensive line of the year. But everybody who was able to get a sack against this Notre Dame team did it from the same side of the line. They were all coming from the right side of that line. Nobody came from the left.
Which in the line's defense, Sam Hartman should have seen that.
Right?
That's not his blind side. His blind side was protected.
So that's a lesson of the day. Sacks are just as much of a quarterback stat as they're an offensive line stat.
And interceptions are just as much of a wide receiver stat sometimes as they are a quarterback stat.
That's less definitive. I will say definitively, sacks are definitely.
I still say sometimes. I have seen offensive. I still
definitely partially a quarterback stat.
Hit it.
Oh man, I gotta stop myself from dying real quick. All right, we're good. Next up is the offensive line for the University of Oregon. This is
another one of those units that wasn't penalized. Very disciplined all year.
Right.
Very good all around unit. But go ahead, I cut you off.
This offensive line has my favorite center in the country in Jackson Powers. And they don't let up sacks. They just refuse to let up sacks. I know I just said sacks are also a quarterback stat. And yes, Bo Nix was able to avoid some pressure every now and then. But they just don't let anybody through most of the time. And if you watch a game of Oregon, you can tell that's what's happening here. This offensive line is just really damn good.
Yep.
Easy enough. All right, moving on to the University of Washington.
Do I see 4 Big Ten teams on this slide? Notre Dame is a Big Ten team in hockey, so I'm counting them.
I like the thought. I'm going to roll with it. They're an ACC team. Let's be real.
But they're Big Ten in hockey.
Yeah, but I want them to get left behind when we break away. So they're an ACC team.
Dude, that's not going to happen. That's one of those teams with the resources. They got private donors and they don't need to tell anybody where they're spending their money. Let's be real.
We're talking about Washington's offensive line, who also doesn't let up sacks at like a very surprising rate. They just refuse to let up sacks.
I think Washington and Oregon both led the country in least amount of pressures allowed when I was looking up the stats. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
Their pressure rate was like 2% for both of these teams.
I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Not going to lie. That's pretty good. They also refuse to give up tackles for loss. Washington and Oregon both, and not just the pressures, but also open up lanes for the running backs too at relatively profound rates when we're looking at Power 5 offensive lines here. Just some really solid units.
Yep.
For the group of 5 offensive line, we have a couple of cheeky additions here. Starting us off with Air Force.
I can't, man. Look, I was looking at the stats and I was actually really impressed with what I was seeing. I really wanted to. I almost put them in on the finalist page for our votes. But here's the thing, and this drove into why, as a note here, Air Force's defensive line was number 4 for me on my list. Something happened the last part of that year. Their rushing yards went down heavily. They started getting penalized more. Something broke after that Army game, and that made me very resistant to take any of the Air Force guys that we had for offensive line and defensive line. Because I'll be honest with you, when you look at these pure stats, these two lines are top 5 in the nation. Not just top 5 in the group 5, top 5 in the nation on overall season-long stats. But something doesn't sit right with me. I understand it. I appreciate it. I actually don't necessarily disagree with it. It's just, it's hard for me to sit there and overlook that the way the season fell apart on them.
So Air Force offensive line fell apart, but Army's just got started.
Got better.
With an Air Force game.
Let me guess. Next one's Navy.
Actually, no. Navy did not make the list, but Air Force, Army, both. So what's equally impressive to me, not only like the stats and stuff, like, sacks allowed, whatever. These teams don't drop back to pass. You can't really take that one into account.
That's why I look at pressure percentage and sack percentage, like literally a evening stat.
Right. So those stats are really good. They also don't allow tackles for loss, which maybe you can chalk up a little bit to the style of offense they run. It's literally designed to get out of trouble, even if the offensive line creates some trouble for you. But that's not really what happened when you watch these games. They were legitimately moving defensive lines around the field at will, and they're doing it undersized.
Yes.
It is very impressive what these lines were able to accomplish this year.
And what makes this even more impressive is within the past 5 years, they got rid of the chop block and the cut block, which are two blocks both of these offenses and Navy relied on heavily to use their size to their advantage and make wide open holes. Air Force and Army have adapted around that and have found a way to do this with legal blocking schemes now that really open everything up. And the way they do it is they're moving guys and then they're making them make a decision.
Yep.
It's a true zone blocking scheme that puts the defense in a bad situation and off balance.
It's just run so well that we have to recognize them.
Yep.
Next here, though, is Liberty. We've talked about the rushing yards for Liberty so much. It's fair to recognize this offensive line is putting in some dang work out there.
Liberty's actually passed Air Force for rush yards per game at the end of the season there.
Which, holy shit. When's
that's
the last
impressive.
time anybody beat any of the service academies in rushing yards per game?
I don't know. 2023 Liberty.
Yes, that is the stat. That's the only one to ever do it, probably.
Wild, dude.
No, Liberty was so good on the ground, and every time you drop back to throw, you have a couple of guys on the bookends, not letting anybody through. Yes, It is true. I keep saying this. Liberty did play the weakest schedule of anyone in the country. It is also true that when you watch these guys play, they looked purely dominant. And at some point, you just have to recognize that. And 13-0 is nothing to scoff at, even when you do play the 133rd ranked strength of schedule.
Correct. You still did it right for 13 games.
Moving off of run blocking into almost purely pass blocking, I'm talking about the Western Kentucky offensive line,
The air raid.
who yet again refused to allow anybody to touch their quarterback, at least like most of the time. There were a couple of sacks allowed in there, but it didn't happen that often.
Look, man, those are the stories you love to see. When the offensive line actually takes care of their quarterback like that, and then the offense feasts, it's great. And Western Kentucky has been doing this with that air raid offense and that air raid blocking scheme now, year in and year out. Man, I don't see him slowing down with it.
So actually, as much as we talked about Liberty running the ball, Western Kentucky throws the ball just as often, right?
Yeah.
And Western Kentucky only allowed 9 sacks on the entire season, which is tied for second best in the entire FBS alongside Oregon and West Virginia. So outclassed the entire group of 5 in sacks allowed, and they're throwing the ball more than anybody. This is the definition of what you're looking for when you say offensive line for an air raid team.
Facts.
And the FCS offensive lines of the year, starting us off with a little bit of power blocking here with Illinois State. This line was surprising.
I love how you say power blocking and then you have a picture of pass blocking.
I know, but it's they got down and nasty with it. Illinois State was a team that surprised us all a little bit on really kind of 2 different fronts. Like they were just good enough to make things really interesting, but at some level I thought they might be better on at least on defense. On offense though, they were actually great a lot of the time. And the passing game was on point, exactly what you look for out of an Illinois State offense every year. The rushing game, though, with this offensive line in front of them, they could do whatever they wanted to most of the time. It was really impressive to see, especially in that Missouri Valley when you have to get through some of the best defensive lines in the country week in and week out. But when we talked about I think it was last week in round 2 of the FCS playoffs, I brought up a stat like the most efficient offensive lines in the FCS. One of those was Montana State. What do I mean by efficient offensive lines? I mean like yards per rush before contact kind of a stat. That's the kind of thing we're looking at there. Montana State was just moving dudes. Also, Montana State runs a 2-quarterback system. If you haven't seen Montana State play in a while, summarize it for you.
Won't.
True, but summarize it for you. They have one guy who throws the ball decently well and runs it mid. And then they have another guy who runs it decently well and throws it mid. And they use them pretty well interchangeably, depending on the drive. It's just like a gut feeling which quarterback they go with. It seems like. Can't make heads or tails of it. Both of them are somewhat effective because they have this offensive line in front of them.
And I was going to say that's a huge shout out to the center with that because every quarterback is very different. They like to put their hands slightly different. Some like to cup it. Some like to really just keep their fair distance. And adjusting to that is absolutely insane.
Right. Just ask Weber State's long snapper last year.
Oh my God. We will not forget about him. We will bring him back at the worst possible time, all of the time.
Next up here is South Dakota. Now, we've already talked a little bit about how that tight end was helping in blocking schemes, but the offensive line was doing their fair share by their good and lonesome. This was just a from a yards per play standpoint, it's hard to ask for much more than what South Dakota was able to produce. Like every time they touched the ball, they were going to get 3 or 4 yards just by sheer force of this offensive line.
3 yards, cloud of dust, man. I'll take it all day. I'll take it all day.
And paired with this defense, that's all you needed most of the time. So it was
Hey.
pretty good.
3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 12. That's more than 10. We're good. Keep it going.
That is math. Good job.
Thank you for
I
attending
approve.
math class with the big dudes in the trenches.
That does leave South Dakota State because, of course, they're on here.
Look, there's nothing about this offense that misses. That's the issue. And that's what's honestly going to make it hard when I'm deciding this is really what is the most important thing to this team, because we're not going to sit there and I'll spoil it. Like, we're not going to sit there and make South Dakota State the winners of everything, even though we realistically probably could. They have been that good at the FCS level this year.
Yeah.
But
it's close on a couple positions. There are some positions that's less close.
Yeah.
It's just
it's
I don't
insane.
know. But
look at the 3-bar mass too. That is, love that on 64.
Right.
Fantastic. And then
Beautiful.
Doug, how do you feel about seeing all the chips on the paint on 65 there, getting his head involved?
I know.
That reminds me of the shoot. Damn.
Good stuff. Offensive line's getting nasty with it. Love to see it. Moving right along to the defensive line of the year for the Power 5, starting us off here, of course, which means we're starting with Clemson. Now, Clemson had what most would consider to be a down year, but this defensive line was all over the ball all the time. This is one of the greatest pictures I've ever seen of a defensive line. 3 different players converging on the ball after a fumble.
But did they come up with the ball?
I believe that they did. I'm pretty sure.
There's a North Carolina offensive lineman that if they don't pick that up, he's falling on it. Either way, look, Clemson has become D-line U. They're kind of nuts in how well they churn out defensive linemen at this rate, and this is no surprise to me. They generate their pressure with a 3 to 4-man rush, and they generate consistent pressure that speaks to exactly how good that defensive line is.
Especially up the middle this year, more than most years, it's really up the middle. The defensive tackles for Clemson have been phenomenal this season.
It took them a while to get going, but once they did, they didn't look back.
And next up for defensive line of the year in the Power 5, we're looking at Penn State. Now, Penn State allowed like the fewest rushing yards of any defense. Also had very close to the top for tackles for loss, actually the most in the Power 5 for tackles for loss. And a lot of that came from this defensive line. Both edge rushers were on point. Chop Robinson looks like he's going to be a first-round pick out of this defensive line. And it's just a unit you really don't want to run against.
No. Ask Iowa. They tried.
Yeah, pretty much. We saw that one. And we've already seen one guy from this next defensive line, which does give it away a little bit. We're talking about Texas. All right, so I know this picture is from the spring game. It's Texas players tackling Texas players. But also I love this picture because it's 4 defensive linemen tackling one guy. And that's this defensive line this year.
Yeah.
They were just all in all the time.
Yep.
Oh, man.
No, we already talked about it. When you can plug the lineup in the middle as well as Tavondre Sweat can, the rest of the guys just get to go eat in one-on-one battles. And that's what happened, and that defense actually carried them through in those few games that Quinn Ewers was out, which is a nice, refreshing change of pace for the Big 12 to see somebody actually playing with the defense.
Right? It's crazy.
Underhanded
crazy
comment.
how good that is most of the time. When your defense is good, you're a better team.
No.
And then on the outside of the defensive line, of course, we're talking about UCLA. Inside Clemson, Texas. Outside Penn State, UCLA. Which do you like more?
And it really depends on what you're going for, because UCLA was not as good on the run defense, but they were much better in the pass defense, generating the pressure, forcing the QB hurries, and getting the sacks on top. Insane how similarly these teams play, but how different the outcomes are based on the coaching staff and the talent they have out there.
Right. Right. And definitively one of the scariest pass rushing rotations on pure defensive ends I've seen in quite some time.
Yep.
UCLA had the Murphy brothers and Leatu Latu, and just they were able to do whatever they wanted to when it came to obvious passing downs because they had two guys who would get to the quarterback regardless if they were rushing 4 or only rushing 2 guys. I mean, those 2 guys would still get there. So,
yep.
Huge credit to that defensive line in particular. On the group of 5 side, starting us off is Boise State. Now, they didn't start off the season that well. They ended phenomenally and were the heart and soul of this defense for the Broncos that ended up winning them the Mountain West title. Oh my gosh, what a great end of the year for this Boise State defense and this defensive line in particular.
No, that's 100%. The turnaround after firing Andy Avalos is absolutely insane. It's wild to see how quickly that turnaround happened, and it just makes you wonder about the mismanagement. And that's about the time the defense turned around too. This is when they started tightening up that defensive line, and it made it impossible. Hell, they shut down Air Force's run game, which is not easy to do.
Next is James Madison, who had Jalen Green and James Carpenter. And do I need to say anything else?
Yeah, they got the big boy in the middle.
Those 2 guys by themselves would be terrifying for anybody. But you add to it, they had another guy up the middle who was really good, and another guy on the other side of the defensive line who was really good. And actually, if Jalen Green weren't racking up almost near record-breaking sack numbers, the rest of the defensive line would have been just fine as well.
Yeah.
So
if he wasn't doing it, well, somebody else on that defense would have been.
Kind of crazy to think. I legitimately cannot name you a single defensive back on this James Madison team, and yet I still consider them to be one of the best defenses in the group of 5 this entire season. This defensive line was that good.
Yep. I actually am excited to see that matchup between Air Force and James Madison in the bowl game. That's going to be wild.
We're talking about an offensive line of the year finalist and a defensive line of the year finalist going head to head.
Yep.
Beautiful. Next here is Troy, which said Kamani Vidal was the heart and soul of the offense. Heart and soul of the defense was the entirety of the defensive line for Troy. They got pressure at an alarming rate. They got tackles for loss at an even more alarming rate. They were everywhere you wanted them to be and then some. Yep. And they won the Sun Belt title as a result.
That's usually how that works. You have a good run game and a solid run defense. Well, it'll do good things for you.
Right. I wish we would have been able to see Troy and James Madison for the title.
I do too. I do too. That would have been great.
But they beat up on App State. So
next year. And
UTSA is our last finalist for the group of 5 defensive line of the year. Now, one of those defensive lines that maybe doesn't jump off the screen at you statistically, but always felt like they were making the right play at the right time, especially when it came down to conference play in the American this year. I could not possibly name you a better defensive line in the American Conference than UTSA's once it came down the stretch. And that's including some really, really good teams. So UTSA is very well deserving of this, even though they might not show up in the top 10 of every statistical category you're going to be looking for.
Yep. No, UTSA, that the team as a whole, it started down. It got very much better throughout the season. And that defense was what kept them steady in a lot of those questionable times.
as much as you shat on Army, this Army team did beat UTSA early in the year, which speaks to a couple things. Army was up and down, and UTSA got way better at the end of the year.
Look, UTSA's issue for a large chunk of the season was that Frank Harris had a major regression in interceptions.
Yeah.
Let's
true.
be real. That's the hot and cold of UTSA. The defense kept them steady.
That is true.
Come on now.
Fair enough.
Did you just sell me out?
Okay, fine. FCS Defensive Line of the Year, starting us off in the SWAC with Florida A&M. Now, what's really scary about this picture is the best player of this defensive line isn't even in the picture. Isaiah Land didn't make the cut in this exact photograph. But this defensive line has got to be up there as one of the top two reasons Florida A&M was the best team out of all the HBCUs so far this season. We'll find out in the Celebration Bowl.
It's going to be Howard.
Yeah, we know. We know it will be Howard. But in the meantime, we can say Florida A&M looks like the best team in the HBCUs.
Facts. Look, this defense was all over the place all year. It started from week 0 against Jackson State in the SWAC kickoff game. The team has not looked back since. We said it before about some of these other teams, but for Florida A&M, this defensive line is the heart and soul of this team and this defense.
Next up, some familiar faces here.
Hey, I've seen them before.
South Dakota State.
All right, we've talked enough about South Dakota State. I'm not going to lie. They're really good. They had to be here. Let's hit the next slide.
Southern Illinois is our next team. If you watch the Idaho game, that alone should tell you how dang good this defensive line is. Because, wow, Idaho could not move the ball on this front. This picture is from week 1 against Austin Peay when
Austin Peay could not move the ball.
A conference champion, Austin Peay, couldn't figure out how to move the ball. Also, Northern Illinois, who prides themselves on being able to move the ball, could not move the ball. Against Southern Illinois.
Look, so I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna say this. We were talking back in the offensive lines of the year that Air Force and Army would move the defensive linemen, and thus by moving the pile, they move the ball forward. The Salukis do the opposite, and what I mean by that is the defensive line pushes the offensive lineman back. That creates issues for running backs.
It was really fun when Bug and I went to SIU and South Dakota State because it was like an immovable object meeting a whatever the saying is.
An immovable object.
Unstoppable force.
Yes, an unstoppable force meaning an unmovable object. Yes.
And nobody went anywhere except for the occasional break to the outside by one of South Dakota State's players.
Yep.
And they would get like a bunch of yards. But then the defensive line would stop them again anyway, and it'd be a punt. It was like, it was crazy.
Wild, dude.
Oh, man. His defensive line kept them in a lot of games where the offense couldn't keep up anyway, but defensive line kept them in it.
Yep.
Enough about Southern Illinois. Let's move on to our last finalist. You might be thinking, hey, that looks like Albany, and you're right. You also might be thinking, why is Albany number 4 if this is alphabetical order? It's because they go by U, Albany, and U comes after S in the alphabet. U, Albany is weird.
You overthought that.
I know.
I approve, but you overthought that.
So Anton Junkins.
I was actually sitting here thinking like, he's gonna sit here and tell me it's the other team in there. That's actually who we're talking about. And I knew the answer.
Anyway, Anton Junkins was one of our finalists for Defensive Player of the Year for the FCS. He's part of this defensive line who was really solid across the board. Like one of the best parts of this team. So,
which was a really
good sign.
Team.
Yeah. It's usually a good sign when your defensive line is making plays.
Yep.
And this defensive line made a lot of plays.
And now they're on our finalists.
If you don't believe us, go back to what Tug was saying before about all the forced fumbles from Junkage alone, there were more than that from the rest of the defensive line as well. They made a lot of fucking plays.
Look, and you can ask Doug. Nothing annoys me more as a fan, as a part-time coach, than when a team turfs the football. Do not drop my baby sister on the grass.
But when it's the
Simple.
defense forcing the fumbles,
well, that's dropping the other coach's baby sister. That's different.
yeah,
That's okay.
Well, drop kick the other coach's baby sister.
Yeah, that too. That'll work.
Bring her to me, I'll adopt her. That's too creepy. We're moving on.
All right, yeah, let's see the coaches here. All right.
For the Power 5.
Yeah.
Coach of the year.
How do you want to do this? I feel like if we sit here and let us both talk, we could talk about all 4 of these for both for Power 5, Group of 5, and FCS. We could talk about them for hours. I would prefer not to talk about them for hours.
I mean, right. Fair. We'll keep it brief.
All right, we'll try to.
Starting us off, this is once again alphabetical by last name because I tried too hard with alphabetical by you Albany. What bullshit. First up here is Eli Drinkwitz, head coach of Mizzou.
So this is hey, I did not quite expect Mizzou to be as good as they were this year. Yeah. He's been building this program for a few years now. They're on a track where you can see some potential in them in the future. They're still more than a few years out, but they're making a name. They're becoming relevant. I like everything he's done.
Which SEC coaches agree with us because he was named as SEC Coach of the Year by the other head coaches in the SEC.
Damn, we're pretty good at this.
Right. Our next guy was not the Coach of the Year in his conference, though, because Kalen DeBoer beat him out. I'm talking about Jed Fish is our finalist for Power 5 Coach of the Year because, again, talking about expectations versus what they actually were able to accomplish. I don't think anyone in their right mind thought Arizona would finish inside the top 25, and Arizona got all the way into the top 15 in the country with an offense that nobody expected, but also just being really fun.
What Arizona was able to do, especially with how they started, because they really didn't start looking out that good. They started the season looking like typical Arizona. The way he was able to get these players to buy in was absolutely insane. That's why they are where they are, and that's why he is our Coach of the Year finalist.
In the ACC, our head coach of the year finalist went 13-0. I'm talking about Mike Norvell. Really should have been in the playoffs.
Very much the same situation as Eli Drinkwitz for me. Mike Norvell has been building this program. He's done it consistently now at 2 schools where when he gets his guys, they succeed. They should be in the playoffs. Absolutely fantastic season. Even if they came with a little bit of those expectations, it's 1 to have them, but 2, it's another put together an undefeated 13-0 season. Got to have them in there.
Yeah, this is almost the exact opposite of Jed Fish, right? Nobody had expectations. They outperformed them in Arizona. Everybody expected Florida State to go on a tear. And the fact they were able to do it even through some of the hardships at the end of the year is just incredible. That's a sign of a talented head coach. And our 4th Power 5 Coach of the Year finalist is Steve Sarkisian.
Look, man, all you got to say for this is Texas is back. They've been searching for a coach for about 12 years. More than that, actually, about 15 years. And they found one. Texas is back. Not much more to say.
It is really funny, though, that the Big 12 head coaches all voted, and they named Mike Gundy Coach of the Year and not Steve Sarkisian.
That's
one final fuck you.
I was going to say, that's also an expectations. Oklahoma State didn't come in with those expectations. Texas did.
No, I think it was all about the one final fuck you.
100%. But I'm going to defend it because why not? But 100% it was.
Nah, it was all big. All
right, hit it.
Big horns down for the Big 12. But we have him as one of our top 4. All right, group of 5. Starting us off here with undefeated Conference USA champion Jamie Chadwell in his first season with the program. Takes Liberty on a wild ride in their first ever FBS Conference Championship.
I was going to say, he did what Hugh Freeze has started building and he continued it and he did it well. This makes sense to me. No, he needs to be in our finalist.
But Conference USA named 2 coaches of the year.
Boo.
Co-coach of the year. Both of them are finalists for us. Because
Yeah.
we also have Jerry Kill in our top 4 coach of the year in the group of 5.
Look, my
And
man
yes,
lives for New Mexico State. I don't know why, but I am here for it. Again, what he
yes, I
did
have
with
2 pictures of him because it's fun.
what he did with that turnaround is absolutely insane. No expectations, man. He is a player's coach, and you can see it in the way they play.
Yeah, they go all out for him, and it's really fun to watch. New Mexico State is one of the best stories of the last 2 years of college football.
Facts.
Next here, Ryan Silverfield of Memphis. I know Memphis did not finish the season the way they wanted to as potential American Conference champions, but damn, the way that team came together and still with a really solid season. I know a lot of Memphis fans are going to be disappointed that they weren't in that conference title game, but with Tulane and UTSA and SMU performing at the level that they were on offense specifically, it was tough for anybody to keep up, and Memphis played their hearts out. And the fact that he was able to keep them motivated after the loss to Tulane, as rough as that was a big factor for me. And you're nodding your head so aggressively, I think it was a factor for you too.
It absolutely is. I mean, and people can say Memphis had hopes, and they did have hopes for an American championship berth. I don't know if I necessarily had that expectation for them this year, but Ryan Silverfield had them competing and had them in a position where a couple of games go a different way and they're in, right? That's still a big deal. More importantly, he brought them back home to the Liberty Bowl. They're playing a home game for their bowl game, so hey, why not?
And I'll be at that bowl game. Very fun.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Crazy to me that we only get 4 finalists because I had like 4, 5 additional names that I wanted to include. But our 4th one here is Jeff Traylor. So we have 2 Conference USA and 2 American head coaches here for the group of 5. This is leaving off so many great coaches. I hate it. But Jeff Traylor is deserving. The way he was able to turn this team around, the way he was able to coach around some of the regression you were talking about with Frank Harris.
Yep.
The way he was able to coach around the development of a defensive line who clearly got better through the course of the season. I mean, these are some of the things you need a great coaching staff to be able to pull off. And Jeff Traylor was able to parlay that into an 8-1 regular season in the American.
Yeah, it's pretty
only
good.
loss coming at the end there to Tulane, which kind of
you know.
don't blame him for. So
come on, you got to win those. Those are the tight ones. You got to win them.
Sure. Yeah. With a UTSA team in their first year in the American Athletic Conference.
Got to do it.
With well, then maybe he's not going to win, but he's a finalist for sure.
Hey, there you go.
This is leaving off Kurt Signetti, who, yes, did have 1 loss with JMU, but still, this is leaving off John Summerall with Troy. This is leaving off Barry Odom, UNLV.
Yeah, that's the surprising one that got left off here for me. Barry Odom, again, just with the expectations to actual results. That's a tough one for me.
Jason Candle out of Toledo. Man.
Jason Candle would have been on here if he could, win 2 MAC championships in a row. That automatically gets you coach of the year for the BDT. Got to win MAC twice in a row.
That's a new rule. I'm claiming it. That's definitely one of the rules now.
I mean, dude, if you can win it twice in a row, you've reset records at this point. So,
and our FCS Coach of the Year finalists, starting us off with UAlbany's own Greg Gattuso, who is the classic old ball coach up there
with the little stomach hut. Yep.
This is Albany's first playoff appearance in a decade. It's their first conference title in a decade. Greg Gattuso is doing things with UAlbany that we had zero expectations of happening this year. Really impressive stuff, what he's able to do.
Tough
with these
shit
great
next year,
names.
Greg. We expect it now.
Right? You better fucking deliver, Greg. All eyes are on you. Bobby Hawk is next for Montana. Just the plain and simple turnaround. What we've been talking about with Montana basically every time they come up on the show.
Yep.
This is a completely different team than when they started the season. So it's not a talent level thing. It's a coaching thing. Bobby Hawk has done a fantastic job this year getting Montana where they are. And I don't want to play Montana, tell you that much.
If I'm South Dakota State, I do, but that's about it.
I wouldn't really want to play them if I'm South Dakota State. If I could avoid Montana, I would avoid Montana. But we'll see. Speaking of South Dakota State, we do have Jimmy Rogers up here as a Coach of the Year finalist. Now, I know the expectations were there for him to go undefeated, and he did go undefeated. But also, this is his first year as a head coach.
And
ever.
I was saying this earlier in the season. I used to get but he was handpicked for it. He was trained. It doesn't matter, man. The first year you take the reins it's different. Nothing ever works the way it's supposed to. He was able to put it together, keep this team in line, keep the team behind him, and it's resulted in exactly what it should have, which is him meeting expectations to this point. And there's still a long way to go before they get where they need to be.
And our fourth Coach of the Year finalist for the FCS is Lafayette's John Troxel, an alumni of Lafayette, came back to his home school and led them to their first playoff appearance and conference championship in a decade, similar to Greg Gattuso up there in Albany. Lafayette was not good just a couple of years ago. In John Troxel's first year as a head coach this season, he brought the Leopards back to relevance in a big way.
Yep.
And unlocked some potential there from his guys who were already in the program. This was everything I could ask for from a coaching job. I know they lost in the first round of the playoffs. To some extent, I don't care. It was his first year there, and he made them look this good doing it. They also took an incredible comeback by Delaware to even knock Lafayette out of the playoffs. Like, that was an insane game. So John Troxel did a fantastic job this year.
No, absolutely. And it's insane to watch these guys turn their schools around. He knows what the understands the school, knows what they need, knows how to coach the kids, because a lot of times that culture really hasn't changed that much, at least in the school proper. I'm happy to see it. It's always fun to see that. And these guys are, or at least they were, rolling. I guess they're not anymore.
Believe it or not, that finally does it. I know it's 2 hours later, but we got through all of our finalists for the BDT Awards 2023.
Can I have a break on the links tonight?
You know what? I'll allow it. Allow it. Links are in the description, folks. If you want to find us somewhere, we've been talking for 2.5 hours. They've been scrolling across the bottom the entire time. So you can figure it out from here. We have faith.
Bug, that's just for you. We love you, buddy. We miss you. We hope you had fun. But Doug, you got anything else before I take us on out of here?
No. Literally nothing.
Guys. It's been a wild ride today. Thank you for watching and or listening. And just remember, you can't win a game if you can't win in the trenches.